There are a lot of really interesting discussions going on today, and I've been really appreciating them. And there are a few key elements surrounding a lot of these things, which is when people participate in social activity, societal activities. You know, the Arab Spring is really important one. There are really important issues of anonymity and privacy, right? You know, how much do you have the right to remain anonymous? Do you have to let people know? Can you participate without the government knowing who you are? Right? You know, we heard examples of people having their public Facebook account and their real Facebook account. And these kinds of questions come up in just about every domain. So I want to spend my 10 minutes or so talking about these issues in the domain of learning. So I want to start by doing a little activity, which is why I need these lights, which just might be just a tiny bit uncomfortable. Yes, you, and you know who I'm talking to. Can you stand up? What's your name? Andrea. What unit are you affiliated with on campus?
Oh, thank you. I'm with the iSchool. I'm an MLS candidate.
I see. Great. I have a task for you.
Uh-huh.
If you were going to search the web for, say, trying to figure out what do horses eat aside from hay, what would you type in?
Possibly, well, I could do a Boolean search. so I could go into an advanced search, probably on Google, and say horse diet, not hay, or something like that. I'm sorry, but not everyone would know necessarily how to do that.
I'm asking you what you would do. All right, so thank you. You're a good sport,
okay.
And that's you had actually some pretty good answers. So with that context, I want you to sort of think about how would you all have felt if I asked you individually to stand up in this setting where you might have thought that you were in a sort of a semi-anonymous mode. Maybe your person next to you, right? You probably didn't think I was going to pick on you. That was not a plant. So now I want to do a slight variation on the experiment. I would like to take no more than 1 minute and have each table to work together without having the advantage of really actively using a computer to see if you can come up on any variations on what you might ask for. Well, I guess if you have a computer, sure, you can use it. But you only have 60 seconds. So now you have 60 seconds. Each table, I want you to talk amongst yourselves and see if you can come up with any other ways of thinking of what you might ask for in order to find the answer to what horses might eat aside from hay.
You're getting a high-priced education. Make it work, right? Bernie's good. Bernie has a lot of voices in his head.
Without the computer.
Yeah, I know.
Without the computer.
I know.
Yeah.
The word feed is actually the word that they use in horse diet. They don't use diet. They say horse feed.
Yeah, horse feed.
And another interesting way to get at it, and the fastest way, there were actually been court cases of people who only fed their horses hay. They were prosecuted for malnourishment. Oh, really? Yeah.
But see, I can go back to the whole thing where I don't know the technology is necessarily giving me everything. For a long time, sorry, I really would go back. I get what she's doing.
All right.
Not the nutritional bag, but it's like, yeah, they love the apples and they're like this. There's nothing wrong with that. I think there's there's value that I get if I talk to this.
You would trust the information more.
I think it's a less amount of information. I think I could get very factual information online. That subjective stuff, if I have, I want to go to a human if I don't know somebody, right? But either that or like what I do when I have problems with my pets or whatever is I post something.
Okay, 15 more seconds. Put together your best thoughts.
Right, exactly. So I look for that, or I look for a community of people who are host courses and say, you know what, things you never read about are blah blah blah. You know, so I go to that.
our answer? What is our answer?
Okay. So, which tables? Raise your hands if you feel like you think you might have made some progress on thinking about how to do this. Any tables? Okay, so this table over there, can you all stand up?
I have a mic.
The second table, yeah, all of you.
Oh man!
Ira, can you give him the mic?
Who wants the mic? There you go.
So, can you tell me, one of you, what?
Here's the second mic. Here you go. Here's the second mic.
So, what were some of your other ideas about what you might search for?
We actually kind of stopped after 20 seconds because we decided we would just ask, what do horses eat on it? And we thought we'd immediately get answers from like Wikipedia and places like that where we would just find those kind of answers.
So just ask, what do horses eat? Just right, be absolutely direct. Great, okay, thank you.
Is that it? All right.
All right, one other table in the way back.
In the way back. Here. Just a second.
You guys are ringers. Oh, you can't answer.
I think I originally thought the same thing, and then I was trying to figure out, like, how would I change that? So I figured, what if I just got more specific on the type of horse? So what does a racehorse eat, or what does a pony eat? Just to see if that might generate a different answer.
Right, okay, thanks. So the point of this little exercise is to think about how, first of all, how different it is to work in non-private, and non-anonymous mode, right? It's different when you're just in your own head. It's different when you stand up. It's different when you're talking to people at your table. Some of you knew each other. How many people here felt like they knew every single idea that came out of their table before anyone else spoke? A couple. I mean, I certainly would have, because I already spent a long time thinking about this particular question. No, I'm joking. I bet you I wouldn't either. In fact, I didn't think of that one. The reality is, the most experienced, the most knowledgeable among us in just about any domain still have things to learn from others. And it's very hard to learn from others if you do it entirely on your own. There are social elements, there are informational elements, and so it raises this question of when you're learning, should you do it on your own? Should you do it and take advantage of the people around us? So technology, of course, has the opportunity to potentially help because it enables us to communicate, it enables us to learn from others, and it brings up very clearly this trade-off about anonymity versus privacy, right? At least you guys, even when you stood up, right, when this room, disperses, we're not going to have a really much of a record, except I'm not sure, Evan may have taken a picture of you standing up, someone might have recorded you, but more or less, what started in this room is going to stay in this room, and that doesn't happen with technology. So there are, but as I said, there's multiple ways that technology can help you think about learning. One is social, but the other is other kinds of motivation. Technology can be a game, right? It can pose new questions that you might not have thought of otherwise. So I want to show you a couple of technologies. The first is something that Dan, our futurist, has brought back from next year for us. How many people here know about a Google a day? So a handful of you. Dan, you've heard of it? Now you know about it now. So a Google a day is a place you can go to have some fun and be motivated on things, on what you can search for. So I'm not going to spend a long time doing this, but I'm going to look at yesterday's question. You'll need diving gear to visit most of, and if you don't have a computer, don't do this just yet, because we're going to do this together in just a minute. You'll need diving gear to visit most of the Earth's longest mountain range. Where does it extend above the ocean to form its largest island? So the idea is, here's a question. It is something that some clever people have found as something that it's a non-trivial question to answer, because there often isn't a single web page where you can just ask the question. You can't just ask what do horses eat and get the answer. You have to do a little bit of piecing together. There's some other cool things in here, like hints, a timer. It's actually using Google's index only through the day before the question was asked, so you can't see social answers to that question, which I think is very clever. So that's kind of a nice thing. It motivates you possibly to think about search. But Dan's getting all of the answers, right? You're not learning how other people are answering this question, and you can't use your friends to help you ask explicitly. So there are other approaches to this. In fact, Mary, one of our other futurists, worked on a much more social approach. She had a great visiting intern, Nima Moraveggi, now a grad student at Stanford, and I'll say a previous undergrad working with me here at Maryland, to spend a summer building a tool called Class Search, which Mary mentioned briefly on Monday, which is a way to get students in a classroom to search together and to do their work individually, but to collectively see what the others are doing. So I saw that and I said, wow, that is just brilliant. I really, really like that. I asked Nima where I can use it and how we can use it, what website we visit. And he has all kinds of other cool things he's working on, and so that project was dormant for a bit. So I said, I can do that. So I recruited Alex Quinn, a grad student, raise his hand. And for the last several months, we've been building a prototype that I want us all to play with, and it is called Search Party. So now's the time where if you have laptops or netbooks or tablets or phones, or other internet access devices, open them up, find a web browser, and visit this URL, search-party.appspot.com. And this is something that is very, very much a work in progress, so who knows what's going to actually happen. I've never used it before with more than about 5 or 10 people. So the idea here is to try and collectively see if we can find answers to questions and think not only to find the answer to the questions, but learn about searching and learn about how people think about those questions and think about how they would look for that information. So I'm going to log in as a teacher, and I'm going to want you to log in as a student. So click on student. I'm logging in as the teacher. So here's the collective view, which is going to aggregate everybody's work. And what you're going to do is you're going to log in to this same website, search-party.appspot.com, log in as a student, where you're going to type in your name or pseudonym, so we're sort of not quite fully anonymous, and you're going to type in this list lesson code, 27805. Oh, see over here, people are logging in. Excellent. So this is one of the cool bits of this technology, is it's entirely web-based. There's no server, there's no proxy servers are set up. You don't have to install any software. Everybody just logs in. We're making some progress here. And what I can do is I can see, well, we'll start over here, what queries people are typing in, right? So if people that aren't logged in, I'll show you what they're doing. Sorry, let me log in as a student, and we'll go back over there in just a second. What you get is a search box, and you can type in stuff. I'll just type in probably a bad query, mountain range. You get some search results. When you click on it, you get an embedded view of that page, and you can say, no, that's not really helpful, and try again. So that's what each student is doing. As they're doing it, we can see what searches are going on, along with whether or not the person doing the search, thought that query was helpful or not. Right? 2 people searched for this underwater mountain range, and so we can collectively be looking to see what people are doing. We can see what might be being effective by seeing whether people thought it was effective. And we can see this in lots of different ways. So first of all, I can just look at the different things. This is all of the words that were queried. A lot of mountain, a lot of ranges, a lot of versions of Earths. There are a lot of things we know how to do to make this better that are not yet done, like do more aggregation, more collection, but you can see that these were all grouped together, even though many of them are slightly different. We can see what links were followed and which ones people rated as being helpful or not helpful. I'll delay clicking on the answer just yet. These are answers that people typed in. We can also drill down. So when we have queries that were...
Do you want to ask them to lower the lights just to hear?
Oh.
For the people in the back.
Sure. Can you lower the lights back to a projector version? Thanks. We can drill down to see which queries people voted effective, and now we can look at the sort of anonymity issue, right? We can see who typed that in, right? So Joe and Kay Daisy typed these things in. We can see what words they typed in, what links they followed. And so this helps us to both give people credit. I'm not going to pick on you right now, but you can imagine in a slightly smaller setting, if someone had typed in an unusual query like humanities, I might ask Nikki why she thought that would help her answer this question.
HCI up there, huh?
H is clearly trying to make some point of some kind. When is lunch? All right. Amos, see me after class. Right now, this is as far as the drill down goes. We are working so you'll be able to sort of drill down and aggregate in many more ways. We can now see now that's been running for a while, we can see that mountain, variations of mountain and range were in fact considered to be helpful. Longest was helpful, right? Kind of interesting. Ridge. So the sort of standard words in the question were good. Underwater, which is kind of interesting because underwater wasn't in the question, right? So where did that come from? Well, so this might be a case where we can see what the queries that people performed to get underwater from. We can look at, maybe they got it from Hawaiian Islands, or we can ask, hey, Greg, why did you type in underwater?
You're Greg. Just because it said it extended above the ocean, so that means that it was probably under the ocean.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
Very clever of you.
Thanks.
Okay, and we can look at answers, and we can see there are a lot of people typed in Iceland. That seems like that has got some possibilities, so we can... all right, that seems like a pretty precise answer. Thank you, Kay Daisy. These are all people that typed in Iceland, and so we might talk to them. So the point is, right, we did something collectively in a way that would have been hard to do individually. We got a sense of what kinds of things might have been helpful in a place, in an environment that we really were more seriously trying to study this. We might have used this to really drill down into the content, to really drill down into why people were asking or searching the way that they did. We're envisioning that this kind of tool can not only be used to help people search, but also use this as content. So when you're studying some other content, let a class collectively discover information and learn what they discovered and what they accidentally discovered, what they shouldn't have discovered, right? So this can also be something that is very contentful. And this concept of having a social activity in a classroom where we can aggregate what people are doing and then drill down into who's doing what isn't limited to search. Right, so we can also envision that this concept can be used on any classroom activity computer-supported classroom activity. I'll just put in here if you're logged in and you want to play. In fact, it looks like some people have. I typed in some of the Google a Day searches for the previous 5 days. And so you can see maybe some people started to play with some of these questions. Some of them are kind of hard. I had to look up some of these words myself. So I think, oh, okay, thanks. Dan says me too. So I guess the question that I will close with is, under what circumstances should we support real anonymity? And so under what, in other words, how much is anonymity a right? In what circumstances should real identity be required? Because I want to know who H is. Right? Under what circumstances is non-anonymity required? So, or, the world often says, well, it's your choice. Pseudonyms are kind of a balance. Sometimes, Google Google Plus started saying we're going to have real identities, and there was very strong pushback on large scale saying that was unacceptable. Are there settings where real identity is acceptable? So this is my question, trying to understand these balances and how they can be used. Thank you.
Thank you. Many years ago, Victoria Bellotti, who's an ethnographer, anthropologist, worked for me, and she did a really interesting study at San Francisco Chronicle Newsroom. This is actually pre-instant message days. Remember those days? And it turned out that the journalists in the newsroom had a kind of chat facility. It was sort of on a VT100 terminal. I mean, it was back in those days, right? But they had one line at the top of the screen where they could actually chat to everybody else in the room. So, and what would happen often is someone would call the reporter and she'd be on the phone and then chat. Does anybody know this crazy person I'm talking to? And it was a sort of shared collective space. I bring that up because it's a little bit like Search Party in that you're sharing amongst a set of peers non-anonymously with real identities what's going on sort of in the space. And that was a really important tool for them because it allowed them to ask in real time questions kind of like you would on Twitter, right, of people you know. In that sense, the population it was distributed to was relatively small. But you can think about extending that now in the modern age to doing collectively crowdsourced fact-checking. And what would that be like with a tool like Search Party, where we have potentially millions of people participating in a fact check, kind of like factcheck.org, one of these outfits? What would that be like? And what would it be like if I had a million anonymous people saying something versus people that I could track down their identity? And I think in that kind of situation, you really do want real identities. But I will agree that there are lots of cases, as you pointed out, you do want to be able to support pseudonyms and so on.
Yeah, when we did the class search studies, there was anonymity was never brought up, interestingly enough. And as I had said on Monday, many of the students actually usurped the technology to, like, for instance, get their name real big up on the board or say bad words, and the teacher had to run to the display and delete them.
I thought about doing that to Ben.
Yeah. And still, you know, it really wasn't an issue. They knew they were going to get in trouble, obviously, but they still did it anyway. They chose to do it. And the teacher really appreciated being able to see who was typing what. I mean, it was really informative to him or her. So I think in those trusted situations, you're sort of giving up your anonymity.
I just want to make a point about anonymity in the midst of the Arab Spring or the Arab Awakening, because it has been really a very important issue. You know, some of the governments have been more technically savvy than others. For example, the Syrian government has had more of a learning curve in terms of hacking into some of the political activists' websites and trying to trace some of the activists using their own IP addresses and trying to find out who they are, where they are, and what they're doing. So the issue of anonymity has been very, very sensitive in this regard. In Libya, there has been a very dramatic case of, you know, a political activist who was actually doing some broadcasting out of his own home. And he was being killed and attacked while he was doing one of the live broadcasts. Killed, and his wife came, you know, on YouTube and she said, my husband has just been killed by some of the Libyan, you know, police officers. He paid the price for, you know, sharing his identity online. So this issue, I think, is of extreme importance in terms of the Arab Awakening or the wave of change in the region. Yeah.
Well, you know, actually, an interesting aspect of this is there's the identity you share consciously and intentionally, like with your login or if your YouTube account or whatever, right? And then there's, even when you try to cloak your identity, you may not know enough of the technology to understand that your IP address will identify you within a certain region and so on. And on the other hand, if you know enough about the technology, you can use a cloaking service and actually then reroute it through these anonymizers. So an interesting question, I think, for all of us is how technologically sophisticated do you have to be as an individual to get the kind of anonymity that you desire? I don't know an answer.
Well, unfortunately, pretty technical.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah.
And of course, privacy is a moving target over region, culture, age. So it's not set. Are there comments that anybody up here would like to say as we wrap up? And then we actually have time for questions from you, so start thinking. Are there things you would like to say about today or about what you've been thinking?
I just have one comment for Ben. I like that. But my question would be, how do you get it so there's more than 20 or 30 people using this? So it's cool to get 20 people working on a shared task. It's small enough. But how do we get like 1,000, 10,000, a million, a billion people working on a problem?
I totally agree with you that that's what makes it really exciting. I'm pretty confident that that is something that we're starting to think about. Our current aggregations are textual lists, which are highly unscalable. But that's the easiest part to change, and everything else is scalable. So I think millions is really hard. I don't see any reason conceptually that for this, I'm not even searching, but for various kinds of information tasks, thousands seems like that ought to be pretty straightforward. So a question that came up on Tuesday night: how does the government decide which beaches to protect under global warming and which ones to give up? I would love to have this kind of sort of collective technology to get 1,000 and then 1 million people to participate in searching for information, figuring out what kinds of things, resources people brought to ask that question, what their opinions were, and aggregate them. So aggregation at scale, I think, is a great, great, great question.
You're going to have to be very careful that people don't game the system, though. I mean, lots of protections
People would
against
never
that.
do that.
No.
Well, we'll start off with questions that aren't so important.
Well, one thing I'd like to say sort of on this topic is that I think it's important for each technology provider, Microsoft, Google, Twitter, Facebook, all of us, to sort of take seriously that we reveal as much information about what information you've revealed to us as we can. So, for example, at Google, we have the personal dashboard. You can go see for every Google service and every Google product exactly what your exposure is, what you've allowed other people to see, and you can then modulate it and say, I don't want everybody to see my real name here, or I want to withdraw my authorization for this particular service. And it's all in one place. It's a fairly long page if you signed up for all possible Google services, but one by one, you can actually go through and see and change the behavior of it if you want. By the same token, we also have a page which summarizes all the governmental requests to Google for access for information. So many governments actually, for example, will ask for information from us from Gmail and so on, and mostly we say no. But occasionally, because of laws, we have to say yes. And next you can go through and see that. It's all aggregated on one page. You can also see it on that same page, what services are currently being blocked by which governments. So is Syria open today or is it closed today? Who knows, right? But you can go to the page and you can actually see that and watch the volume of traffic over time. So I think that's incumbent on all of us to be able to provide as much transparency as possible.
Yeah, but it's the it's the steps to get to Google that often reveal you.
Say more.
So the ISP that you log into, they'll reveal who you are, or you log into another website that gets hacked, that has less security.
Yeah, that's what we were saying about how technologically savvy do you have to be, and I agree. You need to kind of know a lot.